The best way to think of quantum systems, quantum energies, that they're higher dimensional energies coming in through higher dimensional spaces. The whole universe exists only because of quantum energy, quantum entanglement, and superposition. Quantum systems are 5D technology. We've developed the ability through various tools to enhance existing quantum fields, capture and collect various types of quantum energies, and use 3D systems like sound or light to propagate quantum energies on these existing systems so they can hold more space. A lot of people think that the quantum technology has a direct healing effect. In my own journey, as I started building quantum devices, I started feeling better. The physical body is amazing. It helps us metabolize, synthesize ideas, energies, and just our very way of being. We live in a world that's essentially toxic. We're being bombarded by everything from heavy metals, chemicals in our water, pesticides in our foods, EMF, bad air quality. All of these things contribute to the mitochondria not functioning properly. A lot of the new research is coming out showing that quantum energies directly have an impact on mitochondrial function. The quantum devices are simply creating a healthy, energetic environment.
Welcome, everyone. Today, I'm really excited to dive deeper into the topics of quantum technology, how that supports our evolution of consciousness. I couldn't think of a better guest for this. Very excited to have him on the show. It's actually my husband, my soul partner, my twin flame, my love, who has been co-creating with me on this journey of awakening and ascension for as long as we've been together. But feels like eons in terms of the amount of information we downloaded and brought into the world. Daniel Michael is a quantum innovator and engineer. Welcome, Daniel.
Thank you, Deanna. I'm excited to be here.
I know you're on a long healing path. So maybe tell the listeners your healing journey, where it all started, and how did quantum come into your life?
That's a really long journey, and I think we have to go back to the beginning. When I was a young child, I was always present to phenomena. I could see spirits and hear spirits and see spirits occasionally, and I was always really present to different kinds of energies. I could always tell when people were sad. I've always been very psychic, much more clairsentient than clairaudient, so I would just have a deep knowing of things. And as I got older, these energies and these phenomena got stronger. I'm your classic empath. I feel everything. And over many years, that became a problem. Feeling everything, feeling too much, knowing too much. About, I would say, 20 years ago, I started studying what being an empath really is, what the mechanisms work, how it works, and started to learn to tune it out. At that same time, I would say about when I first started to awaken, I was in my first ayahuasca ceremony, and I was having a really hard time in the ceremony. And I was in a nonlinear space. The spirit of Aya, she took me to a room, completely black room. And in the center of the room, there was a glowing orb. She told me to touch this orb. I'm here with this dimensional being. And so I touched the orb, and the energy fills me up, and I can't hold the energy. I explode like a supernova. So to give our viewers a little bit of an idea, it looked like this, except it was glowing, the orb. So I touched it again. The same thing happened. I filled up with all this energy, and I just couldn't hold it. It was like the energy was bursting out of me. I felt like I was exploding like a sun again. This happened 2 or 3 more times, and then finally I got tired of touching the orb and exploding. I just sat down in this non-linear space and closed my eyes. You can think of like Inception. When I opened my eyes, I was standing in a temple. It felt very much like Egypt. And I climbed the stairs in the temple. At the top of the temple, on the altar, there was a box, and I opened this box, and inside this box are a pair of rods, which we can get into later. And I picked these rods up, and I held them, and I felt this really cool wave of warmth just move through my whole body. And I put the rods back down. I walked down from the Temple Mount, and then I flashed back, and I was back in the room with the orb again. This time when I touched the orb, it was a very similar sensation. This warm energy flowed through my whole energy system. But this time, instead of exploding like a supernova. I was able to hold the energy. The spirit of Aya came back and she said, "Congratulations." Then I flashed back to my seat in the ayahuasca ceremony. And then actually I ran to the basement and started writing in my journal to remember what these rods were, what this technology was. What this technology turned out to be was a calibration technology.
Hmm.
Through many iterations in the last decade of building this technology, we learned that they were called Nitu rods. And what that translates to is spirit rods. So they were used by the ancient initiates in the mystery schools to calibrate their biofield and their spirit so they could commune with higher dimensions.
And I remember when we went to the Metropolitan Museum, and this is 9 years ago, when we approached the Egyptian section and some of these mummies were holding something very similar in their hands and they were crossed over. And it was interesting because some of these rods were cut, like you couldn't actually see what the object is, but you saw that they were holding something in their wrists.
Oh, the technology has definitely been suppressed. In ancient times, it was only used by the initiates, and it was only used in the mystery schools. And somewhere along the line, the last couple of thousands of years, it was forgotten. Just like our history, it was rewritten. But I think a lot more of us are remembering a lot of these ancient tools and bringing them back into the world. What also happened in that ceremony was, for me, this ceremony was the culmination of years of studying in different schools and studying different types of what you would call metaphysics, so different types of magic. In that same ceremony, I had another vision of Saint Germain. And Saint Germain was on a mountaintop in Mount Shasta. He essentially invited me to Mount Shasta. So after the ceremony, I'd never been to Mount Shasta before. I wasn't quite sure who Saint Germain was. I hadn't really encountered him much before this ceremony either. And I took a trip to Mount Shasta to go summit Mount Shasta.
And I know that summit wasn't as easy as it seemed. What exactly happened at Mount Shasta?
I know a lot more now than I did then. A lot of people listening are probably familiar with human design. I'm a projector. And what that means is I have limited energy centers. I'm built to be, not to do. And so I trained for the mountain climbing, but it's pretty hard. I went up with a group of 10 people and I was always lagging behind. Every half an hour or so, the team leader would come back down. I was probably about 30 feet away from everybody. As soon as he got into my energy field, I would start mad dashing back towards the group. I guess he was a generator. So when he came into my energy field, my engines or my motors essentially mimicked his and gave me bursts of energy. And he kept joking about this. That's why I kept coming back, because every time he came back, I would pretty much catch up to the group. So we made it to base camp. It was like 20 degrees below zero. We had to dig out our tent. We had 4 layers of clothing, including Gore-Tex as the outer shell, but we didn't have heated gear on that trip. So one of my companions actually got hypothermia and we weren't able to actually summit. But we went to sleep that night at base camp, which is about 3/4 of the way to summit. I'm sleeping and I wake up in this other place, another space. And there was no medicine involved in this either. I was mostly up way Mount Shasta. And it looked like what the representation of Shambhala looks like. It was tropical and there was a lot of people, potentially masters in robes. I'm walking through this paradise and people are looking away from me. I continued down a path until I got to what looked like a tribal elder's hut. And I opened the door. Inside the hut, it looked like there was a tribal elder meeting. And I walked in and I started to approach the bench. There was Saint Germain. He was talking to someone, and I waited until he was done speaking to someone. And he looks up at me and said, "Thank you for coming. Thank you for making the journey. You have very important work to do." And then he handed me a ball of energy. And he said, "It'll make sense later, but you're only half baked. Please come back when you're done." And then poof, and I woke up back up in base camp, minus 20-degree weather, freezing, but I felt accomplished because I went to Mount Shasta to see Saint Germain. He gave me something which I didn't quite understand. It took me many years to actually understand what that was. When we were on the mountain during the solar eclipse, it's something to do with holding the energy, holding the vibration, and being there during that moment that was so important. And this ball of energy that he gave me was some kind of information or energy that went into my energy field. And I've had similar experiences like that in the past when I was younger. It's almost like this energy or information sits in our energy fields And at a certain point, when something else occurs, it's like a lock and key. It's waiting for something to happen, almost as if it's a mathematical equation. And we do live in a mathematical universe. We live in an ontological universe. Everything expresses as mathematics. It's almost like the right confluence of situations, events, things have to occur in order for this information energy to unlock itself. So I left Mount Shasta, and at the same time, there were a lot of people doing different types of ceremonies and rituals for this solar eclipse. I had also been studying at the time with the Saraset Society, Pan-African Society run by Ra-Uni Men, one of the 6 initiated kings of Ghana. I had seen him in court at his house about a week before I left, and he said there was something really important to do. I got down from the mountain, and there were a lot of people, a lot of metaphysical people who were setting up crystal grids and things like that. There was a lot of prayer wheels. As I'm walking around, I realized that all the technology that they were using wasn't calibrated properly. So I had a couple of conversations with people, and they let me work on their medicine wheels, and they let me work on their crystal grids, and I was able to realign it. And I felt like that was why I was sent out there, to realign it, but also to awaken.
You and I have been on Shasta several times after, and we had some really profound experiences there with some beings in the city of Telos, the inner earth beings, and some to do with technology. I'm just wondering your thoughts on this technology existing in other realms and other dimensions and being guided. Why is quantum and this energy is needed right now, and these ascended masters coming online and helping us in these awakening journeys? How your specific guides help you to download some of that information?
Quantum's always been here for tens of thousands of years. A lot of the work that we're doing now was done by the Gnostics and the Druids. Any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic. But what's happened over the last 10,000 years as our civilization has risen and fallen multiple times, most of it's been lost. Everything that's been passed down has either been through the secret mystery schools or oral tradition or deep remembrances from other lifetimes. That's what some confluence of events, situations, energies occur, and people rediscover things that they have worked with in other lifetimes. One of the reasons that quantum is so important, as we go forward, sometimes we have to take 2 steps back in order to take 1 step forward. After that encounter with Saint Germain, I had already been doing a lot of different type of metaphysical and paranormal spiritual work. The next thing I did was I built a wand, because that's what you do. You build a wand. I built a lighted wand. Essentially, it took a torch light and a quartz crystal. The first few iterations, I think it was a deep remembering. I'm like, this thing is nice to hold, but I'm not really sure if it's doing anything. But it became a focal point for my attention and my own awareness and my own consciousness. I started doing a lot more spirit work and spirit releases at that time. I became aware of more darker energies, spirits and disembodied energy or energies, attachments, thought forms, and then even demonic energies. And once those things came in my awareness, more of them started to come into my awareness. People would show up who had attachments and needed those released. So I would use some of these tools and these technologies to release those attachments and to deal with discordant energies. In the beginning, it was a lot of what you would have seen in Exorcist, a lot of prayer and a lot of working with angels and angelic realms in order to transmute energies. The more of this work I did, the sicker I got. I got physically ill. It got to the point where I had to stop doing this kind of work. I'm also a Reiki master, and I had to stop doing healings on people because it was draining too much from me. Even though I had already built cleaning protocols and cleansing protocols, none of it seemed to be working. So about 4 years ago, I got really sick with swine flu, and right before COVID happened. It was a real turtle medicine. It just made me go really slow for a while, and I prayed a lot, and I was then instructed to go use sensory deprivation tanks. So then from that point on, I spent about 200 hours in sensory deprivation tanks.
For those who don't know what central deprivation tanks, maybe you can tell us more what that is.
Oh, absolutely. And if you haven't tried them, I highly recommend them. So a sensory deprivation tank is essentially a gigantic pod, and it's an enclosed swimming pool. And they fill it with water and about 800 pounds of Epsom salts. Once the Epsom salts saturate the water to a certain point, you begin to float. So it's the same exact effect as if you were to lay in the Dead Sea in Israel. When you're floating in that much water in salt, it creates almost like a 0 point. So another thing I've observed through a lot of the metaphysical work that we've done, salt water seems to neutralize negative energies. So when you're in a sensory deprivation tank, you're essentially protected from all the negative energies. It's just you in that tank with 800 pounds of salt and about 300 gallons of water, completely in the dark.
So it's like back to being in the womb of the mother in some ways.
It's exactly like being in the womb of the.
And so that became your new practice where you were able to have experiences.
Yes, that became my new practice. Almost 3 times a week for almost 2 years. A couple hundred, about almost 200 hours in sensory deprivation tanks. While I was in those tanks, it took a while, but I was able to both gleam into the Akasha, which is essentially the repository of all information and all knowledge. There seemed to be beings, higher dimensional beings, that were guiding me through this process. What they explained to me was that all of the spirit work that I was doing, all of the entity work and depossession work that I was doing, that I was operating from the wrong state of consciousness. I was using lower principles in order to try to deal with those discordant energies. And to break that down a little bit more, you can think of the Archangel Michael as an example. He's always carrying a sword, and he's the go-to for any type of spiritual warfare. But when you pick up a sword in a spiritual battle, you then give the energies, entities, and discordant energies permission to attack you. It becomes a lower principle of attack. And so over a period of time, they started to share this idea with me that the correct way to operate is to hold your energy field in a way that you're radiating outwards and you're not attacking anything. And as an empath, this is really important because empaths, we feel everything. So we're always poking our energy in one direction, in another direction. We're always sensing everything in the room. Honestly, you come up to realize that being an empath is really nosy. You shouldn't, it may feel like, for everyone, if someone needs to hear this, it may feel like a superpower, and it is, and you can turn it on and off. But you have to ask yourself also, do I have permission to know these things about this other person in this situation?
Do you think that's something they can control, to turn it on and turn it off?
Oh, absolutely. It just takes training. So for me, I was working in Manhattan about 15 years ago, and I decided to go sit in Times Square and try to train myself. And so I went a couple of days, the first 2 days of Times Square, and just sat there for a couple hours, and it was pure chaos. And then the next 5 days, I microdosed on small amounts of mushrooms, psilocybin. First, it became much more intense. And then over a period of time, over the next 5 days, I learned how to completely turn it off and dial it down and understand what is mine and what is not mine, what's other people's in any given situation.
So it's really increasing the awareness of your field, what's in your field, and how to stabilize your field. The more awareness you have, the more control you have of how you want to manipulate it.
Absolutely. That's a great segue, actually. So you can think of psilocybin and analogs like DMT as a type of fuel. In the ancient Vedic texts, they talk about something called the Antakarana, which essentially is antenna Merkaba. So you can think of it right above our head or our consciousness, an antenna Merkaba, which gives us the ability to perceive energies and fields, places that are beyond our visual spectrum. It's all around us all the time, happening all the time, but we're not tuned into it. So for a lot of people who are just awakening, they'll use psychedelics in order to fuel that, in order to access higher states of consciousness, higher states of reality, and higher states of information. But over time, with practices and enough emulation, what a lot of people find, interestingly enough, is they say that psychedelics don't work anymore. What's really happening is that they've moved in and out of those processes enough times that their mind, body, consciousness are now producing these chemicals naturally through the pineal gland or the third eye. And the antenna Merkaba, the Antakarana, is now active, and they're able to perceive more information without the help of plant medicines or anything else.
That's a great segue. And important to know that all of these training wheels, ultimately, we need to remember we are the technology, and this human vehicle is incredible. We just discovering all these things in terms of science and quantum biology of how this vehicle is operating. We are spiritual beings having physical experience, but how this physical experience manifests itself is important to note. Share with us more about specifically your physical experience in your journey of healing and how to buy the physical experience.
This breaks us into the world of quantum biology, how quantum systems affect biology. So during that time in the sensory deprivation tanks, I started downloading more information. Like when you're a little kid, you have an erector set. You have to put the first screw and bolt in and build a support structure before you can put the next and the next and the next. So every week I would go back into the flow tanks or the sensory deprivation tanks. I would get a next piece. And over a period of time, what it was shown to me was, why is quantum important? The best way to think of quantum systems, quantum energies, that they're higher dimensional energies coming in through higher dimensional spaces. Now, in an environment, in any given environment, there's quantum energy. The whole universe exists only because of quantum energy and quantum entanglement and quantum observation and superposition. That said, because these quantum systems need to be integrated. So people are starting to talk about 5D technologies. Quantum systems are 5D technology. However, we live in a 3D reality. And that means that these 5D energies need to work with 3D systems in order to raise 3D systems higher towards 5. We've developed the ability through a various amount of tools to enhance existing quantum fields, capture and collect various types of quantum energies, and then use 3D systems like sound or light to propagate quantum energies on these existing systems so they can hold more space. Now, what's super interesting about this quantum technology, and we're all learning, we're all figuring it out, it behaves very strangely compared to a lot of the technology that we use right now. A perfect example is, a lot of people think that the quantum technology has a direct healing effect. And in my own journey, it seemed like as I started building quantum devices, I started feeling better. And over time, and a lot of the new research is coming out showing that quantum energies directly have an impact on mitochondrial function. What is happening is the quantum energies in the quantum devices are simply creating a healthy, energetic environment. And the best way to articulate this is to look at Dr. Emoto's research. The Japanese scientists, they're still in Emoto Institute in Japan. We're actually starting to work with them with some of our technology. He postulated that if you put the intention of love in water, it would be able to hold more information or more energy. And so what they did was, he basically wrote love on a bunch of bottles of water, and he held that intention on the water, and they froze the water. And then what they found was that when they froze the water, it generated these things called beautiful crystals. Now you can think of them as intricate snowflake patterns. When he did the opposite, like fear or hate, there was no beautiful crystals. The water structure was completely fragmented. So these 5D technologies, because they're coming from a higher octave, they modulate and harmonize the energies in an environment so that they have these beautiful crystals. When we talk about beautiful crystals, that's the metaphysical aspect. What that means is that the water itself has taken on a more complex structure. It can hold more energy and hold more information. And what we observe with the quantum technology is the same thing. If you're exposed to these quantum field generators, the water in our bodies, once again, it goes back to water, and we believe it works on the hydrogen mechanism, seems to take on a more coherent structure and become harmonized in the environment. And if there's more energy and information that's able to come into the water in your body, which is 70% of your body mass, then everything in your body is going to start working better.
That's incredible. And those incredible snowflakes and beautiful geometries, and realization that we are water too. We are water beings and we light beings, and that also happens to us. So whatever we put into our body or the environments that we're in affect. So most of the environments high on EMF these days, and everything is very discoherent versus being a coherent environment. So the quantum helps with that. What about mitochondria? Tell us more about the energy production that's happening as well that quantum supports.
So I want to take one more step back to what you were saying before about harmonizing EMFs. So myself personally, I used to be really sensitive to EMFs.
Mm-hmm.
I would have to turn the router down 10% and just couldn't be anywhere with a lot of radio frequencies or radio signals. But since I started working with the quantum technology, those things just don't affect me anymore. We actually got discouraged in the beginning when I was trying to measure all of this, because at first I couldn't measure it. There was nothing being affected on the electromagnetic frequency spectrums that we could measure. But after doing some research and talking to other quantum innovators, what appears to be happening is not that the energy is being blocked. Blocking something is a lower principle. The harder we try to block something, the more energy we need to use to block it. It seems to be changing the structure of these energies, which are discordant, back into more natural energy without affecting the information, that it's not as harmful to the human organism.
That's a great explanation. So as we create coherence, so is the mitochondria, which is the organelle in our cells, that is also multidimensional. And when we have those usually jitters in our body, that's usually actually our mitochondria that responds before even our brain has a moment to comprehend the jitters we feel. So what does quantum do in the mitochondria?
There's a lot of talk right now in the quantum biology field that the mitochondria themselves are operating on a quantum level. If you've ever had chills go down your arms, your spine, or your spidey sense has ever kicked on seconds before something dangerous happens, or you ever just got the sense that something's going to happen, your mitochondria are receiving information quicker than your other sensory organs. The mitochondria are essentially power centers. I firmly believe through my own research that the root cause of most dis-ease, being not at ease, is poor energy production in the body. And to dive into that a little bit more, most of our listeners are probably familiar with acupuncture. We've seen acupuncture. When I was going through my healing process, I was doing a lot of acupuncture as well. And it would work for a day or 2 days or 3 days, and I couldn't figure out why. And I started reading acupuncture books. And there's this wonderful book by a PhD, I believe his name is Jerry Tennant, and the book is Voltage is Life. He goes on to explain that the core principle of acupuncture is to understand that the organ systems are battery packs. When you have one organ system that's not functioning properly, you use acupuncture needles to trace a line between the working organ systems or battery packs and the malfunctioning organ systems or battery packs in order to get the body to move electrochemical energy between the two systems. And so that's why acupuncture works in the moment, and it requires a lot of repeating it over and over again because you have to keep pulling energy from one organ system to another. So that brought me to the question is like, why do you just recharge all the organ systems at the same time? Instead of pulling energy from one system to another system. As I was having this experience in these sensory deprivation tanks, I was being guided to build more and more devices and technology that would attract and amplify the existing quantum energy in an environment. I found that over a period of time, my own mitochondria started to operate better. They started producing more electricity, and my organ system started to have more power. These beings in the spiritual guidance were pointing out that I was recalibrating myself, and I was starting to operate from higher principles of coherence and radiance versus trying to negate or take something away from something else.
The technology, the quantum creates the field. The body already knows how to heal itself because ultimately the body always knows what to do. It wants to be in its optimum alignment. It just didn't have enough battery charge. So if our phones are running on 20% and our battery is red, it just cannot operate as quickly if we're at 100% or 80%. So we need to plug in and recharge our cells. But can we make the cells better? Can mitochondria be fixed? Because many carry dysfunctional mitochondria, and I've been reading about mitochondrial DNA. It comes through the feminine line, usually ancestral healing that we all do. There's always traumas and dramas, but it's also the mitochondria. The battery is just depleted over time, and what we genetically inherited, plus the environment itself that has been poisonous with EMF and things like that. So is quantum enough, or is it best to do it in combination with other things you can consume?
It's a great question. Even in my own spiritual path, a lot of times when people are on deeply spiritual paths, they'll focus on the idea of spiritual enlightenment, but forget about the physical body. The physical body is an amazing tool. It helps us digest, metabolize, synthesize ideas, energies, and just our very way of being. The thing about batteries are, you have an anode, a cathode, and then you need some kind of solution. With mitochondria, we live in a world that's essentially toxic. and we're being bombarded by everything from heavy metals in our water, chemicals in our water, pesticides in our foods, and EMF, really bad air quality. All of these things contribute to the mitochondria not functioning properly. Now, the human body has one directive, and it does that really well. And it'll do what it needs to do, slowly start to shut itself down over a period of time to survive. That's where the mitochondria come into play. They're producing energy, but if you don't feed them properly, they start producing less and less energy, and they start creating bad copies of themselves. And then those bad copies start producing toxins, and then those toxins create inflammation. It becomes a really interesting cycle. How do you power the mitochondria? There's actually a lot of different ways. Believe it or not, the more exercise you do, the better your mitochondria are going to work. Imagine if you didn't take your dog for a walk for a year. Eventually, your dog wouldn't even want to go for a walk because his body would just shut down. Human bodies are the same way. But how do we feed the mitochondria? You need to hydrate properly. Start with that. Clean water. You need to pull as much of the toxicity out of your environment over a period of time. Not all at once, over a period of time. That means anything that disrupts your biology, from chemicals in the water, so you need clean water, from chemicals in your food, that means organic foods. Anyone who has arthritis right now, believe it or not, about 70% of arthritis, non-rheumatoid arthritis, can resolve itself just by pulling pesticides out of your diet. And we have a bunch of case studies on that as well. Clean air is another big one. And then there's supplementation. You need to be drinking copious amounts of clean water and structured water, if possible, to be exposed to quantum energy. There's a lot of different ways to structure water, even hydrogen water. So you start with the water. Then you need building blocks for your mitochondria. This is where a lot of people falter on this. Everybody takes a multivitamin, but what you need really are minerals. Your system needs minerals. Even if you stop taking your multivitamins, and I'm not recommending that, and start doubling down on minerals every day, you'd notice a big difference. Q10, copious amounts of Q10 and other amino acids. So you need amino acids, you need CoQ10 and minerals. If you start there, you'll notice significant improvements, and exercise. When I say exercise, I'm not talking about going to the gym. I'm literally talking about getting your 10,000 steps in a day.
And I know shocking the system is helpful too, such as doing sauna or the other way around, having cold plunges or cold showers. You need to shock the system constantly to remind it that it needs to be more in optimal alignment. So let's get back to the rods, because we started with that. I'm interested to hear about other technologies. So now we know how it's super beneficial and people can use it. The rods are more started as meditative calibration rods, but we've taken the rods to the next level. I'm actually holding this beautiful other set that's called Star Rods that you and I created. I'm really excited to talk about them. I helped put some light codes imprints of a specific star system, which is Lyra. How are these different from the Maat calibration rods? Maat calibration rod on Etsy available. I'll share the links in description. We've sold almost 2,000 pairs now around the world. People using them.
That's a great story.
Yeah, it's an incredible story. Helps with meditation, helps people to rebalance masculine and feminine side of the body. What you were saying, the initiates were using them in the ancient Egypt and Atlantis. So bringing that artifact to the people around the world has been really incredible for us. And I'm really excited about this next version, which is a quantum version of that starter rods.
So the Maat rods, which were the original rods that we created almost over 15 years ago, when we first made them, we fill them with various types of crystals and coils and minerals. We actually added selenite into them also to prevent quantum entanglements. So it's really interesting. What we've seen, anybody else making rods, they don't do that. So the problem with most rod technology is they can only be used by the initiate because your energy essentially gets embedded into it. So we realized by adding selenite into them that they can be used by groups and by many different people. When we build the rods, they don't do anything. They're interesting. They're just basically these tubes, and they're just essentially paperweights. What happens is we put them into a gigantic copper pyramid. We built a custom 20-foot pyramid, and we sit them in there for about 2 weeks. They take on both a radiant energy charge and they take on an electrical charge, which we're able to measure with a multimeter, which is actually on our store also. I think there's a picture or a video of that. They become sun rods. The pyramid structure, the pyramid shape, seems to anchor directly into the energy of the sun. For all intents and purposes, we're baking these Maat rods using sun energy, which seems to be, through our observation, different than the other quantum energies that we're working with. When we first made the Maat rods, we were just using them in ceremony. We made a bunch of pairs for other friends and people that were in ceremony. We found that people can telepathically communicate in ceremony with these rods, which is really cool. And at some point, some of my peers said I needed to make this available to the whole world. So we put them on Etsy, and we found that there were other people making rods, but they were really expensive. We priced them so that anyone could afford a pair of rods. It's become our mission statement, making technology, ancient technology, affordable and accessible. So whereas other rods were $400 or $500, we were pricing our Maat rods at $111, and people were just really receptive to it. And we've sold over 1,500 sets just on Etsy over the last 4 years.
People even taking baths with them, and it helps them really to hold their field, especially for empath. Maybe you can talk a little more about why you think that is.
Yeah, absolutely. So these are sun rods. Essentially, they have the same energy as if you were sun gazing. When you expose them to water, once again, those coherent quantum principles come into play. I didn't realize this until we had been making them for about a year. A woman reached out to me and said, I was guided to throw these in my bathtub. And I'm like, I'm not sure if that's a good idea. She's like, no, it's a really good idea. The water feels completely different. So we started experimenting, and we realized that they were structuring the water. So if you put a glass of water between your rods and just sit it there for 15 minutes, the water and the information is going to change and hold more energy and information. The same thing happens when you hold the rods. Your whole body, the water in your whole body starts to become more coherent.
That's a great explanation on the calibration rods. What's the difference between them and the star rods, this new version that we've created?
So star rods are really interesting. This is where we get into actual quantum technology and quantum theory.
And copper and zinc, explain also why the different metals.
So copper seems to be more of a masculine principle, whereas zinc is more of a feminine principle. And that correlates to different hemispheres of the body and the brain. So we usually say copper on the right, which is the masculine principle, and zinc on the left, which is the feminine principle. Without getting into too much of the secret sauce, when we started to develop the quantum technologies, we started to understand how to collect certain types of quantum energies from a natural environment and how to concentrate them, and then how to overlay them like a hologram be overlaid onto various artifacts. Quantum and consciousness are very much interconnected and intertwined. Ideology, intention, everything potentiates. So we were able to take a star map, specifically a Lyran star map, and some light language, and put it into the quantum generator with the star rods and overlay that information permanently into the metal.
So for those who are interested, the more upgraded version, but what the quantum rods do, so if Maat really grounds you, the quantum experience, usually first you ground, but then you go quantum. It really takes you into the void, people feeling their energy field very expanded. It's just them too. If you hold in something that is quantum, it reminds your body, your mitochondria, how to charge up. It's a different type of effect, which is incredible for those who are on the soul journey interested for expansion. So that's a new, really cool product we just created as a co-creation between two of us. We'll put the links for these. Now, maybe mention some other really cool technology that you have available for those who might be interested. And I know there's more coming.
So we've been innovating. So I like to think of myself as not just a tinkerer, but an innovator, a quantum innovator. When I was going through this healing journey, we were creating more and more tools, and almost all the tools that we've used or that we produce now, we used first on ourselves, and then we realized that they had the potential that other people are going to want them and need them as well. So one of the first things that we created was the quantum crystal healing bed. I had used a crystal healing bed, one of those John of God beds, when I was in Mount Shasta, and I thought it was really interesting. I couldn't directly tell if it was healing or not, but I still thought it would be a great idea to build one and try it out. So we built one, and interestingly enough, the standard crystal bed does work. It seems the color therapy itself, interacting with the crystals, seemed to patch holes in the energy system. So once again, we're coming back to this idea of things are not directly healing us. Our bodies know how to heal themselves, but these technologies are creating an environment that allows us to heal ourselves. And over time, right after we built the crystal healing bed, we realized that we can take the crystals and encode them with these quantum energies. And as the light moved through the crystals, then the quantum energy would propagate on the light and move through the crystals as well. And that's where it started to get really interesting. Because while a crystal healing bed you can think of as 10%, the quantum crystal healing bed takes the energetic calibration potential up to 100%. We started making these crystal beds and they've been really popular. We're making them very affordable compared to other crystal beds on the market. And we actually think that they're probably one of the most high-tech crystal healing bed on the market right now because we've layered in this quantum energy. We've also been innovating with quantum batteries or canisters. And what these devices are essentially copper and several other metals and minerals that have been run through this quantum process. They put off an energy to themselves. They actually act in a modular way. When you have more than one of them or four of them and you put them in a grid, they create a field of energy which creates a 0 point at the center, which once again creates this healthy, energetic environment. Now, when you stack those with a crystal healing bed or any other kind of quantum device, it's modulated at the same quantum energy type and frequency bands. And frequency and quantum are two different things, but there is an interplay into them. They start to all act together. They start to modulate and create points of concentration. So what we'll do is we'll take some of these canisters and we'll put them underneath the crystal healing bed to create essentially a quantum cocoon.
And talk a little bit about the lights too that also go well with the canisters.
We've been developing, and we're patent pending on this right now, is the smallest portable quantum light array set on the market. Now, quantum technology has been around for about 30 years. Right now, there's a couple of companies that are really doing some great work, and there's quantum centers that are going up all around the world, and they're doing a lot. They're helping a lot of people. But the technology hasn't changed much in the last 20, 30 years. Right now, the technology needed to create these quantum fields at a large enough scale in order to create an environment takes up an entire room. We've created a new type of technology, innovated on it. And we've been able to create portable quantum light arrays. They work in pairs. When you point them at each other, the quantum energy propagates on the light itself and collides at the center point, creating a 0 point. Now, two of these arrays create an oval-shaped energy field. If you have four of these arrays, it's essentially two ovals that are interconnecting, almost making the shape that looks like a lotus sitting in a circle.
So there's like a sacred geometry or magnetics that are part of this.
Well, magnetics are a little bit different, but there's definitely some sort of mathematical geometry that's occurring that we just don't fully understand yet.
Maybe quantum entanglement as well, where particles interact.
Oh, absolutely. I believe that the devices are entangling to each other as well when they're in proximity.
So someone who is listening to this and they're like, wow, this sounds incredible. What's a good starting point for them? I know you're releasing some other cool products. Is it the rods, just to get a feel of what quantum is, or the canisters? What would you recommend for someone?
It depends on what they're looking to do and what their purpose is. If you have somebody who's healthy and who's looking to go really deep in their practices, then that's where the star rods come into play. If you have somebody who has a busy mind and looking for an easy way to train the body and the mind to meditate and calibrate, that's where the Maat rods come into play. Now, if you're looking for a little bit more, that's where devices like the canisters and devices like the light arrays come into play. As an example, and maybe you can speak to that also, we've used these light arrays in Kundalini activation workshops. And what we've found is that people drop into their awareness drops in much deeper and much faster.
That is true. That's in my classes. We've been experimenting a lot. We've put either the lights or the canisters in the corners of the rooms, and I've been observing the sound healing. A person drops in easier. The parasympathetic system kicks off. They just more relaxed and surrendering. And at the point we actually get to the Kundalini activation, not only the field is interacting with us, myself and my partner Chris, but also they are feeling the relaxation in the body, so they're able to surrender and receive more and activate more in the process. So any spaces for meditation or yoga or just harmonization of the space will benefit from this type of technology.
we've gotten reports from dozens of Reiki practitioners and healers who have taken at least 2 canisters and a set or 2 sets of Maat rods, and they'll set the canisters up around a massage table or wherever their client is in order to create a quantum field. And they'll have the client hold a pair of rods. They're holding a pair of rods, and they're able to attenuate the client's energy much easier and much quicker. What they're saying also is when they're using the canisters, these Reiki practitioners and Reiki masters, they're finding that there's almost no draw on their own biological systems. They're feeling much more supported, and their sessions are going much deeper. I've also been told several times by some of these Reiki practitioners that when they do past life regression, they're easily getting to 2 or 3 lifetimes, and people have almost no resistance, whereas previously they were lucky if they were able to get 1.
I should experiment with that myself on some of the quantum healing hypnosis sessions that I do, even online, because quantum technology works through quantum space and there's no really separation. So it just enhances your work.
So speaking of quantum, so another thing that people can try, we're actually launching in the next 30 to 45 days a quantum generator service. And what I mean by that is we figured out how to beam through entanglement quantum energy at a distance. We're finishing up some of our tests and trials right now. What that looks like is somebody will go onto our website, they'll sign up for a free trial, and then they'll upload a photo. Using that photo, we're able to entangle a quantum generator to their energy. They will basically get quantum energy at a distance beamed to them.
It's like a quantum boost of sorts, and like an energetic upgrade that supports them. Yeah, I'm really excited for that service to come out and for Aurora Quantum to go live. I think we might do another episode when we're closer to release to discuss more about how exactly that process works and what one can expect.
One of my favorite products that we've created, the world's first quantum body tape. We're officially launching around Thanksgiving. What this is, imagine for a moment if you could strap a battery pack to your body. That's what this tape does. It looks like normal kinesthesiology tape. It comes in 20-inch pieces. You can cut it to any size. You put it any place you have an ache or a pain. Or recently, we're working with a lot of athletes who are actually doing all kinds of really rigorous Ironman type competitions. And they're reporting that their endurance and their speed and their timing and their muscles just working better. This quantum body tape is revolutionary. It's available on our Etsy store right now, and it'll be publicly released around Thanksgiving.
Very exciting product. I think it was one of my first products I tested on myself, because when we just came up with it, I pulled my back and we were going to this gathering festival, and I remember you taped me up and that thing worked. We have so many friends and so many testimonies of the magic that it creates. It works on mitochondria, whatever way it reminds the body to heal and accelerate the healing process and reduce the pain. We are moving from this age of, I would say, materialism, the density, into the age of frequency. Would you agree this is where the future is? It's really quantum.
I think we're moving into the age of quantum. I think we hit the age of frequency in the early 1900s. And there's a lot of confusion around that. When we talk about quantum, we're not necessarily talking about technology like Rife technology as an example. A lot of people have heard of Rife technology.
Or Tesla's.
Or Tesla technology. I think quantum is a little closer to Tesla's technology because the kind of quantum energy that we're working with, Tesla spoke about. And
the Tesla waves, that's
Tesla waves.
The reason why they called that is because he was experimenting with them, but he was shut down.
The difference between frequency technology and quantum technology are Tesla waves. Frequency technology is based on the principle of resonance, that if something is wrong, let's say there's a parasite or a bacteria, if you can find the frequency of that pathogen, you can hit it with an inverse frequency and essentially cause it to self-destruct. But it's a very violent process. That's where we go back to saying, like, it's operating from the wrong state of consciousness. We're attacking something in order to make ourselves better. People have the big C. They have to attack their immune system and destroy their immune system in order to make them better. It's a very archaic and destructive process. And that's where frequency medicine started. I've seen some pretty interesting results, and especially around Lyme disease. But the way quantum works, quantum operates at a higher principle. You can almost think of like frequency technology as a masculine principle, and quantum technology as a feminine principle. Quantum operating from a higher dimensional octave creates a supporting environment. You can think like a mother's womb. And it creates a supporting environment that takes the stress off of the environment and off of the body. It allows the body to then do what it knows to do, which is survive and heal itself. So I think we're moving into this quantum age of supporting structures, and how can we support ourselves and others and the planet and the world and radiate outwards and be that example at a microcosm, and then everything will just work itself out.
I also see that quantum technology is needed right now because it helps us in the transitional period we're in to build this, what many call new earth reality, because the 3D matrix is collapsing on itself, and the 3D is all operated in this push and pull energy. The quantum is all available. It's a 0 point. It's a 5D matter and above. So it comes from the field. So it helps us get closer to that blueprint where we are really headed.
It's the idea that you become what you are and what you eat. And I like to go back to the idea, it's in Greek mythology, of the story of Hades and Persephone. Now, Persephone was a maiden. She was actually the daughter of Demeter, the goddess of the harvest. And she was in a meadow and just doing her own thing. And Hades essentially brought her to the underworld. And she wasn't sure if she wanted to stay or not, but he gave her some pomegranate seeds from the underworld. And when she ate those pomegranate seeds, now she had to stay in the underworld. And because she had eaten matter from the underworld. Now, interventions happened and she was allowed to leave, but she had to come back for 3 months of the year. So the same thing happens here on Earth. We came to help here on Earth, but we stayed for the pizza. This is like an internal joke because the pizza tastes really good, but it's lower dimensional 3D matter. And as we move into this quantum age, we're going to need to retrain our bodies and our energy systems and our mitochondria to absorb higher energy from quantum systems. People know in the biohacking world that you can retrain the mitochondria because many people, marathon runners, they've retrained the mitochondria to be fueled by fat instead of sugar. It's called ketogenics. Now, what if we can do the same thing? It's just a question. I don't have the answer yet. What if we could do the same thing and retrain the mitochondria to not eat sugar or fat, but eat quantum energy systems? Then all of a sudden, our physical body becomes more quantum.
I do believe we headed into this new version of human. Some call it human 2.0, some call it human luminous. So this illuminated human that is more quantum, where the DNA strands that we originally had in the soul blueprint, which was 12 strands, we're getting reactivated. Our mitochondria maybe goes fully online and in full battery capacity, and our system is much more functional. Perhaps we also live much longer than the 120 years that we have prescribed today. So we also figure out how to remove those telomere caps. It's all possible even in our lifetime.
Absolutely. And I'm excited to see where all this research goes.
Thank you so much, dear, for coming on today and sharing all your wisdom and your knowledge with our listeners. And I'm excited for the quantum world and where it's taken us. For those interested in the quantum technology, how it can help you to boost your life or heal you. It's a natural way because quantum is everywhere. Sometimes you just need that very beautiful harmonic environment, harmonized environment to support your body during its healing. And we can't make any claims, but we've seen some miraculous testimonies within even our own family. I would love to continue bringing you on and sharing more of what projects we have coming later.
Oh, absolutely. Some exciting developments as well. We have a biowave device now, which actually measures energy, both of environments as well as physical systems. So we're able to measure before and after somebody using quantum technology. We're able to measure the environment of quantum technology, the way that the energy changes in a room, for instance. So Joe Dispenza gave a lot of credit to this technology. This is the same technology that he uses in his workshops to measure the energy in the environment after they've done 5,000 people have meditated together. So we'll have to do a show and tell. We'll bring some data and we'll nerd out.
Yeah. And it's all connected to soul communication because our soul needs expansion and deeper connection. And like I always talk about, this vehicle is important to know how to nourish as well. So more to come. Thank you everyone for tuning in. Thank you, Daniel, and we'll see you next episode.
Thank you.
Thank you for tuning in to this episode. For more information, please visit the website
tianadivine.com.
We are offering different programs, workshops, retreats, as well as one-on-one work such as quantum healing hypnosis, crystalline cell healing, and more on sourcelanguage.org, offering a digitized course. It's self-paced, where you can open up to your divine gift of light language. I'm Diana Mara Divine, and keep connecting with your higher self